Snortius's mighty voice echoed through the forest as a grin spread across his face. Now everything knew he was there, and they would know well enough to clear off or come looking for a proper fight. The dark forest likely still held many unknown dangers. Snortius had only journeyed to this dangerous place twice, once to kill the great horned beast, and the other time was when he was attacked by the powerful and dangerous blood apes. In those days, Snortius felt fear and trepidation along with his desire to kill and fight. But that was when he was so much smaller. Now he was truly big. Now only the old monster that used to be at Big Cave could have rivaled him now. Snortius was even bigger than the Humies. Snortius pushed away his thoughts on Megahumiopolis and turned to the task at hand. The 2 rafts that they had commandeered for this endeavor were loaded with tools and building materials nicked from Pegleg's workshop. Now, the question was, where could there be a proper greenskin settlement? They wandered a little ways into the forest, but they were not so far that the great river was out of view when Snortius saw it. A big tree that was bigger than all of the other big trees. If every single greenskin in this expedition held hands, they could barely make a ring around this mighty piece of flora. It was covered in vines, and it looked as if many birds and mammals at one point called this mighty tree home because of the many burrows and nests dug into the tree itself. Snortius grinned and slapped the side of the trunk. "Can you imagine the number of snorts you can fit in this baby?" Tree Climber grinned as well, as he and his snotlings began to scale the mighty tree to get to work. While Tree Climber and his snotlings, Orc Jr., Lil Warboy, and Ape Boy, were able to climb their way to the top without too much trouble, the other snotlings, not so much. It is important to understand that Snortius's meteoric rise from snothood to whatever he was now was far from typical of his species. Snotlings were small, stupid, and not very good at anything. And this was painfully evident as the tiny half-meter-tall little gremlins attempted to climb the tree, barely climbing beyond the first few handholds before falling back to the base of the trunk. One snotling in particular became frustrated and gave an angry humph and sat down on the forest floor with his arms crossed, refusing to climb. This did not sit well with Snortius at all. "Stop mucking about and get up there!" The mighty Snortius grasped the offending snotling by the scruff of his neck and hurled him towards the high branches of the mighty tree. "Stop mucking about! Get up there!" The mighty Snortius grasped the offending snotling by the scruff of the neck and hurled him towards the high branches of the mighty tree. Blind fear and instinct took hold in the little snotling as he hurtled through the air. He began grasping at anything he could get his little green mitts on, hopefully before he came crashing back down to the forest floor. Miraculously, in this moment of panic and terror, the little snot managed to latch itself onto one of the thick branches stretching out from the central trunk and clutched to the tree, quivering with fear. At that moment, the little snotling was dubbed Tree Hugger for his survival. "See? It's not that hard. Get up there, you lot!" And the rest of the snotlings, inspired by Snortius's words and threats, managed to scramble up the tree as if their lives depended on it, because it very much did. And so work began in earnest on the tree settlement, and the grots and snotlings began to make real progress as night began to fall. The moon began to rise, and the stars lit the sky, when a low howl resonated through the trees. There was a pause. Then dozens of answering howls followed, creating an eerie cacophony. It wasn't long before the strange creatures came into view. They walked on all fours, and were stout, built for muscle and power. But they were not graceless in their movements. They were hairy creatures with powerful claws and teeth and pointed snouts and ears. Tom, Jerry, and Snortius were on the forest floors as the creatures approached. Tree Climber and his squad were up in the tree. Now was the time for Daka. As the creatures approached, Tree Climber leveled his lasgun and gave a mighty "Wah!" But just as he was about to fire, one of his new snotlings by the name of Dunce was terribly curious about what was happening down below. He moved to look over the side, but a careless step nearly sent him tumbling over. It was only by grabbing onto Tree Climber's leg that he was saved from the long fall from the tree's mighty heights. Unfortunately, this threw off Tree Climber and nearly pulled him out of the tree as well. He dropped his lasgun, which clattered to the forest floor and clung to the edge of the platform they had been constructing. Tom and Jerry were armed with shotguns on the forest floor. Both of them tried to level their shotguns and fire. Unfortunately for Tom, Jerry accidentally stepped on his foot as he was lining up his shot. Tom let out a loud "Ah!" as his shot pulled wildly to the side. And Jerry's, on the other hand, hit home, bursting the skull of one of the strange wolf cats. Snortius, on the other hand, kept things simple. He shook his head at the two squabbling grots and leveled his lasgun. With a mighty "Wah!" fired a neat shot right through the throat of one of the beasts. Two were down now, though it was difficult in the darkness to know exactly how many of these creatures were left skulking about. These creatures had a lupine appearance, but they had sharp, retractable claws. Three of the beasts began scrambling up the big tree, trying to reach Dunce and Tree Climber, who were dangling precariously from the platform's edge. Three other beasts approached Snortius and his two lieutenants. They snarled and menaced the three greenskins. One of the beasts leapt at Tom, who skillfully ducked below the pounce. So confident was this grot that he taunted the beast, sticking his tongue out mockingly. Jerry, on the other hand, felt the cruel claws of another beast rake across his back as he was distracted with the third. Tom couldn't help but grin at Jerry's misfortune. The last beast lunged at Snortius, snapping at his arms, trying to pull him down. But the mighty war-boss avoided the powerful jaws. Back up in the partially constructed tree fortress, Dunce's grip was beginning to slip as he held onto Tree Climber's leg for dear life. Unfortunately for the young, stupid Snot, he was too weak to maintain his hold, and his fingers slipped away from Tree Climber's ankle as he fell all the way down to the forest floor with an inglorious splat, ending the poor Snot's life. Tree Climber, however, was able to scramble back up into the tree and seize one of his javelins. He looked down at the beasts quickly climbing their way up into his tree. He took careful aim, and he hurled the javelin down, piercing the skull of one of the climbing beasts, causing it to tumble backwards. the climbing grot drew forth his final javelin. Whether he hit or missed, he would be without any real weapon if the final wolf creature made it to his position. Meanwhile, back on the forest floor, more beasts emerged from the shadows, trying to kill Snortius and his compatriots. Tom took a big step away from Jerry as he calmly leveled his shotgun to fire again, smugly confident that Jerry would not disrupt him this time. Unfortunately for him, he sneezed at the exact moment he fired, sending his shot wildly off into the tree branches. Jerry gave an innocent grin and shrugged right before blasting another one of the beasts to pieces. Snortius saw the predicament the tree climber found himself in. As one of the beasts leapt at him, the mighty Snot Boss caught the creature out of the air and simply hurled it at one of the beasts scaling the tree. His toss struck the other creature, and both beasts came tumbling to the forest floor. They were not killed, but they were injured by the impact, and they certainly did not seem interested in continuing the fight, and fled off into the darkness. Tom was now menaced by two of the beasts. One slashed at him with its powerful claws, and Tom, terrified for his life, snatched up a hapless snotling by the name of Lard and used the poor thing like a shield. Lard's plump body was shredded, saving Tom's life. Panicking further, Tom managed to fend off a second attack with the butt of his shotgun. Jerry, on the other hand, kept his head. Two more wolf creatures lunged at him, but he easily dodged out of the way of their attacks, keeping his cool all the way. Snortius, however, was not so lucky. After remaining unscathed through much of the fight, a wolf creature leapt at him and bit his arm, scratching it badly. But Snortius's bulk and toughness helped him prevent serious injury. There was one lone wolf scrambling its way up the huge tree, trying to reach Tree Climber and his remaining snotlings. Tree Climber took stock of himself. He could take the last shot and hope he killed the thing. Or he could do something a little more dramatic and foolhardy. Being a proper greenskin, he chose the latter. He seized a thick vine with one hand, and with a javelin in the other, he leapt from the platform, swinging towards his target with a loud "Wah!" His weapon slammed into the beast, piercing its chest and knocking it clean off the tree, causing its body to plummet to the forest floor below. Tree Climber used the momentum of the swing and ran along the trunk to get a bit more speed and allow him to swing all the way back up to the platform, where he landed safely. At this point, Tom gave up trying to shoot. Having missed twice already, he turned his shotgun around and swung it like a club, and immediately found a great deal more success, smashing a beast's skull in. Jerry reloaded his shotgun and blasted a third, making sure to hold up his fingers to show Tom just how many he had killed. Envy and jealousy burned in Tom as he raised his shotgun to bash in Jerry's head. But a little snotling of Jerry's by the name of Tuffy managed to pull the shotgun from Tom's grip in the middle of his backswing, to Jerry's laughter and amusement as Tom swung his arms forward with absolutely nothing in them. The creatures now had lost too many to fight, and they fled the scene. The Grots and their boss took a few parting shots at the remaining beasts as they fled into the night. And so, this marked another victory for Snortius over the beasts of the dark forest. There would be a celebration tonight, though this one would be comparatively small and simple. After all, there was no grand city surrounding them like in Snot-Antinople. But raw flesh was nothing to be sneered at, and the greenskins ate well, as they had that in abundance. Tom and Jerry proved that they were at least somewhat capable, if a bit adversarial. But the real moment belonged to Tree Climber, who managed to help turn near disaster into victory. "We made it! We took this tree from the forest and made it ours. I declare that my boys, the ones that I train here, will be called Tree Climbers Tree Dogs, and this tree shall forever be called the Wolf Tree in memory of the battle." Snortius smiled and nodded in approval, but his mind was already turning on to greater things. The new settlement was established in the forest, but he would need to continue his journey to Megahumiopolis, where Stinky, the Brain, and the Furious waited for him. The beasts of the dark forest were formidable, but the true war, the real fight, was always with the Humies.
No man do they call me, my mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Thank you all for listening to the latest episode of Growing the Tribe. If you enjoyed what you heard, please drop a like and a comment so that one day you too can be a huge green thing that beats up dangerous hairy creatures. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so in order to hear more stories about Snortius trying to take over the world. If you would like to support me, links to my Patreon, PayPal, and merch store are down below. And if you have absolutely no idea what's going on, you can click on the Growing the Tribe playlist, which should be appearing on screen right now. Thank you all very much again for listening. No Man out.